It's me, Tony B, and we've got another debate for you tonight. The 37th District Position 1 debate. This will be taking place between Sharon Tamiko Santos, the incumbent, and John Stafford. Go ahead, Dane, fire away.
Awesome. Okay. So, Mr. Stafford, COVID has upended our education system for everyone. But as we know, it has exacerbated inequalities with well-to-do districts and well-to-do families having lots of resources, with access to quality Wi-Fi, a quiet place to do work, tutoring resources. These can all be barriers to getting a quality education, as well as many families relying on services and support such as food, healthcare, and libraries for school. Mr. Stafford, with your perspective as a public school teacher, how do you see this problem and how will you address it as a representative for the 37th Legislative District?
2 minutes.
All right. So obviously this is a very important, very relevant question. And I do have quite a bit of experience dealing with this, as this topic is a topic of much discussion at my school and elsewhere. So you're right, there are equity differentials in terms of how the education process is playing out. It is lower income and minority students, also special education students that have a higher propensity to not have the requisite infrastructure to be learning as much as they should be at this time. So to deal with that, I do think we need to, there's sort of a mix of short-term and longer-term programs. So one of the things we're doing that I do think makes sense is starting to bring in to the school students with that are more disadvantaged with respect to the learning process in learning pods or learning groups, so that they benefit from on-site learning as opposed to the other students who are learning through the online environment. So that's an important part, is to start to bring in segmented populations actually onto the school campuses. A second issue is, of course, making sure that people that are off-site without access to internet access have access to internet access and devices. So that's critical. And then a third piece is in the longer term, I certainly support, I'll say medium term, moving internet access to become a public utility so that it's ubiquitously available. And that will be increasingly important as we move towards more telework, telemedicine. It will deal with disparities in socioeconomic conditions within districts and also between urban and rural areas. So those are amongst my proposals for dealing with the differential impacts of COVID on the K-12 system.
And that's time. Thank
you. Yes, thank you. My question is, the current political climate is extremely polarized. What can you do to reinforce or refocus, I should say, or make sure that we refocus on what's in the best interest of the people instead of what appears to be a blind loyalty to party, regardless of what is in the best interest of the community?
So I'm going to offer just a slightly different perspective on this. There are many times and many issues where, in my view, the appropriate approach is bipartisanship, trying to find common ground, etc. So that applies to many issues and many eras. But there's also times where things become clear that one side's on the right side of history and one side is on the wrong side of history. And I think we're in one of those times, at least on some of the issues of our day. Climate change. 98% of climate scientists say that this is an emergency that needs to be dealt with immediately. On racial justice, it's clear that we have a racial justice problem in this country that needs to be addressed. I don't think that there's really two credible sides on that. Tax reform, we have the highest income inequality in the history of the country, and yet we're giving tax cuts at the federal level to affluent people. So I think this is a time when, at least on some of the central issues of our time,
that's time.
The party has to prevail. So thank you.